On behalf of Qaeda Millat International Academy of Media Studies and Foundation for South Indian Studies, I'm welcoming you all for this Madras Week celebration 2020. This Madras Day started as a Madras Day celebration a couple of years back by almost um, uh, Mr. S. late Muthaya. He was the editor of Madras Musing, and he is the reason behind Madras history being documented so much and getting a lot of us youngsters involved in this activity. So much so we have a lot of documentation, and he is the one who started this trend of Madras Day along with Vincent D'Souza, Kashmir.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and this is Tasneem here, and thank you very much for the introduction and Anwarji, uh, as well as this opportunity to give this lecture today and on this occasion. Now, we're talking about the Bohra Muslims in Chennai. And once when we discuss this topic, we have to first see who the Dawoodi Bohras are. So going back a little in time, the Dawoodi Bohras are a subsect of the Ismaili Shia Muslims. And they first we have the prophets, then we have the imams. So we believe in 21 imams, after which we believe in the succession by the Duat. The Duat or the Dai are the people who have carried forward the imamat right from after the 21st imam. So right now we are having the 53rd imam in the 53rd Dai in power. So till from the 21st imam till now, 53 Dais have come in power, and they are the spiritual leaders and guides that we look up to for all our religious dealings. Uh, so the Dawoodi Bohras, they first started from Yemen. They had their headquarters in Yemen, and after that, Sayyidina Yusuf Najmuddin, he came to India in through Gujarat. He came through via that coast to Gujarat, and he set up his headquarters there in the state of Gujarat. So what happened was there was a lot of conversion happening. There was a lot of Islam preaching happening, and the Gujarati community there were they were a trading community there. So those people who then accepted Islam and got converted were were the basic trading community called the Voras. So the Voras is basically a term for traders. So that is why this entire term came into play right from then, the Bohra Muslim community. Okay, and this was established in the early 1500s that time. After which we had a succession of more dais come into play, and the in the 1800s, 1700s early, when Sayyidina Qutbuddin Shahid Maula was in power, he was martyred. He was succeeded only by his daughter, and his daughter was married to Mahabat Ali Khan, who was a Shia in the Emperor King's Akbar's court at that time. So the person who actually came to Chennai and started entire community here is a direct descendant of Sayyidina Qutbuddin Shahid. We're just going to have a look at that in some time. And the uniqueness about the Dawoodi Bohra community is that they have a very, very different, very unique tradition and culture that they follow. They have unique attire. They have a different language that they speak, and the whole thing is that this has where whichever part of the world the Bohras live in, this is common to everyone. The libas is called the libasul anwar, which consists of the rida for the women. This is a two-piece kind of a hijab that we wear, burqa that we wear, and it's in different colors. The men wear the kurta, saya, and the topi, and the topi is basically white and golden crocheted topi, which is knitted by the women. And This is the attire. The language that they speak is basically Gujarati, but there is a lot of Arabic and Persian that is in the a part of that language. And the script is Urdu. The written script is Urdu, though when you speak, it sounds like Gujarati. And this language is called the Lisanud Dawat, and we don't call it Gujarati because it has a lot of mixture of Arabic and Persian words as well. It's not pure Gujarati at all. So that is different. Our mosques are different from the other mosques that we pray in. It's unique to our community. And apart from that, we have a unique way of greeting, which we call the salam, which is kissing of hand, which is again one of the Islamic culture that is followed, right from Yemen and the Turkish dynasty, and some Arabians also have that culture of greeting by kissing the hand. So, obviously the women cannot kiss the hand of the non-mahramdars or the non-blood relatives. Apart from that, our cuisine is very different. It has a lot of influence of the Gujarati cuisine, the Gujarati food, Arabic food, Persian food, Iranian food. So it has a lot of influences on it, and also, what happens is whenever Gujarat, the Bohras settle in some part of the world, or they also adapt geographically to that region and to the culture over there. So that food of that area also has influences from that geographical region and their cuisine and culture. So that is again also seen, and that becomes very distinct to that part of where they are residing in. So that is again a very unique aspect of ours. Apart from that, basically Bohras are businessmen. They are always encouraged to do their own business and trading, and even the women are very active. They are entrepreneurs. They have home-based business. They mostly run garment businesses, knitting of the topis, and food businesses, and also some of them take care of the family business as well. And nowadays, the Bohra Muslims are in all professions, and they can be found all around the world. There are around almost 3 million, 3 million Bohras all over the world. So coming back to Chennai, this is just a bit about the Bohras, that a little history of theirs. Now, coming back to Chennai, it's a very, very interesting story on how the population in Chennai came to be, which was then, of course, that time it was Madras. So we're just going to go through a little bit of the history here. Coming back to what I said, the Dai Sayyidina Qutbuddin Shahid. So his grandson, his great grandson rather, was Mullah Jafarji. Sayyidina Qutbuddin Shahid. So his grandson, he resided in Surat, and at the age of 20, he came to Arcot via the spice route, that is the Malabar coast. And his uncle Ahmad was already a trader in Arcot. He was a very well-known trader, in fact, and he also was given the Malikut Tajjar title by the Nawab of Carnatic at that time. So Mullah Jafarji's uncle was already in Arcot. He joined him there at the age of 20. This was something in 1795. We are talking, and he came from Surat with no money in hand, absolutely complete. He was gladdened in poverty, and he was looking for a livelihood. And he joined his uncle there, and then his uncle gave him money to start his own business. And Jafarji was a great trader, and he multiplied the assets for him. And a small conflict, a very interesting love triangle rather, brought him to Madras. It is said that the then Nawab of Arcot, who was there, was in love, had come to know about Ahmad's daughter, who was very beautiful, but unfortunately, she was already engaged to Mullah Jafar. So they he wanted to get married to her. He wanted them to break off the engagement and get married to her. So Mullah Ahmad had to avoid this. He got both his daughter and his nephew married and sent them off to Chennai. And this is how it came to be. We don't know how true this theory is, because there is a lot of discrepancies in this theory and so many things don't match. But this is what we've heard. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a presentation that is there. So we'll walk through the photographs and everything. This is the Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin. He is the 53rd Dayal Mutlaq of 2 million Dawoodi Bohra Muslims worldwide, and he is currently in power. This is the picture of written documentation of Mullah Jafar ji. He was married twice. His first wife was Halima Bi, second wife was Habiba Bi, and he had around 8 children and 5 were sons. His first son, who was Mullah Pir Khan, was an eminent poet. His pen name was Tapish. And from this Mullah Jafar ji, this is the entire family tree that you are looking at, which starts from Sayyidina Qutbuddin Shaheed, his daughter, then from his daughter's son, and then Mullah Jafar ji, then his 5 sons, and the entire Chennai, the Madras population comes from these 5 sons of his, 4 rather, because the 5th son actually passed away in childhood. So the 4 sons, the first son, Mullah Pir Khan, was a poet that we know of. His 3rd son, Mullah Wahib Ali, his grandson was also an eminent poet, and he went by the name Mullah Qaisar. Also, Mullah Wahid Ali's daughter was married to another scholar who was an Amil of Chennai for around 40 years. Apart from this, his 3rd son, Mullah Tayyib Ali, his son Akbar Hussain and his entire family is called the Akbari family, are the descendants right from Jafarji, which are still here in Chennai. So as I was talking about Mullah Jafarji's grandson-in-law, Muhammad Ali Jiva Bhai, he was the Amil of Chennai for almost 40 years. When I say Amil, the administration that is there in our community is at the topmost. We have the Dai, and below the Dai, we have the Amils who take care of the administration of every city, and they report to the Dai or the Sayyidna directly. So every city or every populated area has an Amil of its own. And Sheikh Muhammad Ali Jiva Bhai was the Amil of Chennai for 40 years in 1800s. He was an author. He has authored 3 books on the history of Islam, the history of the Ambiyas, Awliyas, and the Dais and the Duats. So he has 3 volumes of Mausam-e-Bahar. This is one of the first pages that I have put the picture over here, a very old book. We are talking about 1800s, and also Muhammad Ali Jiva Bhai's graveyard is right here in Angapanaiken Street in the Muhammadi Masjid. Another great-grandson of Jafar Ji's was Qaisar, which I showed you in the family tree. And he was a very, very well-known poet in the community. Qaisar's son was Mahmood Inayat Hussain. He has served as the chief accountant in the French bank in Bombay. He was a citizen of Madras. I mean, he was based in Madras, born and brought up there, but then he later moved on to Bombay. And in 1948, he was promoted to the chief accountant. And this is a cutout of the article that came in with the Free Press Journal. From the Akbar, from Mullah Jafar Ji's great-grandson was Sheikh Shakhawat Hussain Akbari. And he was an eminent trader who owned a shoe factory on Broadway called Akbari and Company. This we're talking about 1950s. And he later started iron and steel business. His sons have participated in the freedom struggle. Another son had participated in the as a soldier in the Second World War, and the third son was also a president of the Iron and Steel Merchants Association. So Shakhawat Hussain Akbari had later ventured into the iron and steel business, and in fact, a lot of population of Madras is into this business, hardware business, iron and steel merchants, and his company was S. Akbar Ali, Hyder Ali and Company, which still exists in Lingichiti Street. Of course, it was sold later on to Mandlewalas from Sitpur, but it has changed hands. But if you had to visit over there, you would still find a lot of its original furniture is still intact over there, and the owner is very friendly to. You can take a look around. This is one of the old family photos which I gathered is from the 1950s. Uh, this is again the descendants of Shakhawat Hussain Akbari. Now, the interesting fact over here is when Jafarji's family and they had settled in Madras, there were no Boras around. So, though he was from Gujarat and the language they were speaking at the time was Gujarati, when they came to Madras or they were in Arcot, they were immediately not having anybody from any other Bora Muslims around. So they largely were interacting with the Dakhni Muslims here, the Urdu speaking Muslims here, and largely they adopted their language and culture to a great extent. And soon, when the other population from Sitpur and other towns started coming to Chennai, these existing descendants of Jafarji came to be known as Madrasi Bohras because they were the first ones in Madras, and also they had adopted the Urdu the Dakhni Urdu, which was spoken by the Muslims at that time. Also, their food became influenced by the Dakhni food, and completely the cuisine, took a change over. So, if you still ask around in Madras. The Madrasi Bohra family, they will show you that, these Akbaris and all these other part of the Madrasi Bohra family. And for a long time, they were Urdu speaking. In fact, till my father's time, they were all speaking in Urdu. These are some of the wedding pictures. This is how the weddings used to look in 1978. This is the wedding dress code of the women, ghagras and dupattas, very unique ones. This is the Safi Masjid, which was established in 1809. Interestingly, this was established by Mullah Jafarji. He bought a small piece of land with his earnings, and later on, this was renovated. It was, completely rebuilt in 1973. In between, there was a man called Mota Bhai from Surat who had also contributed to its expansion. So 2 or 3 times it was renovated after Mullah Jafarji established it. It was the first Bora mosque. This is in Moore Street in Paris Corner. You will find this mosque. And this was finally demolished and rebuilt again in the 1973. The present Amil of Chennai, Sheikh Ishaq Ali Sheikh Amruddin Kurawarwala, is the person who is in charge of this area, and the Dawoodi Boras residing in complete Paris area. These are some landmark photos from the Sayyidna's visit in 1973 when the Safi Masjid was inaugurated. And at that time, the 52nd Sayyidna, that is the father of Mufaddal Maula, he was in power. This is his exactly. This is the picture from a graveyard in Agappa Naik Street, where the Muhammadi Masjid exists. That is the second masjid of Dawoodi Bohras. This is the mausoleum of Muhammad Jiva Bhai, whose picture we saw earlier. And this is the Sayyidna visiting that grave and praying Fatiha over there. This is another picture from the Sayyidna's visit in 1992, Sayyidna Muhammad Burhanuddin. Now, the unique thing about the Bohra Muslims is their Jamaat Khana, or the community dining hall. So our cuisine, like I told you, is very different. We eat in a round plate called the thal, where around 8 can be accommodated and food is served for 8. We have a very unique custom of starting our food by taking a pinch of salt and also ending it with it. And we always start our food with the desserts. Yeah, that's a very unique thing that we do. And our food usually comprises of one starter, one dessert, and the main course. The starter and desserts are limited for 8, where the main course is unlimited, and it is only served upon asking so as to avoid wastage of food. So we're very, very particular about our community dining halls and that food does not go waste, and complete zero wastage policy and hygiene is followed in the community, in the kitchens over here. This is the school that was established in Chennai. This is a community school called the Madrasatul Saifiyatul Burhaniya. It's on Broadway. Initially, the school was called Burhani School, which came into being in 1978 in Angappa Naik Street. That time it was a very small building. And now the campus, very many years back, it has shifted to Broadway. And now the school is known as Madrasatul Saifiyatul Burhaniya. It's a state board school, has around 800 children from the community studying here. And all the facilities, everything is up to date over here. And the best of education is imparted to the children. Another unique facility here that you see is the community kitchen service. So around 6 years back, our Sayyidna had started the community kitchen, where the food is cooked, one-time meal is cooked at the kitchen and delivered into the houses of all the Muslims, Bora Muslims residing in different parts of the world. So every city has this kind of a community kitchen service. These are the pictures that we saw of the facility, which is renovated in Moore Street. In fact, it was inaugurated yesterday only, the new facility. And this is how the food is packed, very similar to the different kind of a thing that you see in Bombay. And everybody has a kind of a delivery system in place. One-time meal is provided. The whole idea was to give liberation for the women from kitchen so that they could concentrate and on other activities, on other businesses and other in types of livelihood, their hobbies. So this was one way of bringing the community together. So around 1,000 tiffins are distributed every day from this center. This is the fourth masjid which is going to come up in Roypuram. So presently we have around three mosques. One is the Saifi Masjid, second is the Mohammadi Masjid, the third is one at Basin Bridge, and this is the fourth one yet to be inaugurated. And this picture is from last Independence Day when Finance Minister P.J. Kumar had visited for the flag hoisting. So this masjid is at Roypuram. This is a picture from last year's Ashura Mubarak in Muharram. Now, Ashura Mubarak or the Muharram, the 10 days of mourning period, is commemorated to mark the sacrifice of Imam Hussain, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. So his martyrdom is commemorated every year, and all Shia Muslims basically go into a 9-day mourning period. And for us, Dawoodi Boras, we follow our Sayyidna wherever he goes at that time of the year to listen to his discourses, which are spread over 9 days. So if he presides in a particular city, then the entire people from all over the world, they follow him there and to listen to his discourses. So last year he was in Colombo, and this is the pictures and from there. In Madras, we had a live telecast right from Colombo. So people who were not able to go to Sri Lanka had come to Madras, and Madras was had hosted around 35,000 people at that time. And zero wastage policy, hygiene, cleanliness, and all were followed to the T. And someone made that entire thing possible. And this was also covered by a lot of media publications. Coming to sports, we have our own indoor sports complex right near the MSB school. And the Boras are very, very actively involved in various sporting activities. Cricket, volleyball matches are conducted on a regular basis. And in this league fashion that has now come up. And these are some pictures from the last year's matches that were held at Chennai.
Thank you.
So basically, that was a little bit about the history of the Dawoodi Bohras and how they came to Chennai. And now that there are around 8,000 people here in Chennai residing here, and they are also spread out in different professions, mainly concentrated in the Paris Corner area because the mosque is situated over there. And we have different various committees which looks over all the administrative aspects of the community. Any if there are any questions that you would like to address, Anwarji?
Yeah, there are questions already. First, my apologies. I mean, I never experienced this. Broadband was never a problem, but suddenly at the very beginning itself, while I was introducing Tasneem, it went off. We have various, I was about to say, in Madras, among the Muslim community itself, we have various Muslims communities, the Tamil speaking, Urdu speaking. Among the Gujarati Muslims itself in Madras, we have the Khojas as well as the Kachi Memons. They are also there. The Bora Muslims are the Shia Muslims, and Taslim last year did a heritage walk, Bora heritage walk. That is where I saw the thing, and it's very interesting, the practices and all that of the community. It's a very tightly knit group also. So what are an insight, and I'm very happy that Taslim was able to say. Questions is Balaji Dandamani, he has a question. He wants to know, what about the religious texts? Is the same with other Muslim communities?
Sorry. Like I said, we already have a lot of authors and writers. We have our own community, exclusive community texts are also there, and the others which are common to the other, like the Quran is the same for everybody, of course. Then we have the Najul Balaga, and those kind of texts are definitely, common to all of us. But those which have been authored by the Bohra Muslims, they remain exclusively for us as well. So there are some additional texts as well that we follow, which have been written over this course of time under the guidance of that time, the Dai of that time. So there are texts like that also which are there.
Okay,
and we have recorded our history. Like I said, the Mausam-e-Bahar that we saw, there were 3 volumes of the Mausam-e-Bahar, and we saw about how Sheikh Muhammad Ali Jiwa Bhai has written that. So the first and the second text talk mainly about the Ambiyas and the Awliyas, but the third one talks about the Duats. Now this is very exclusive to our community only. So that way we have some different texts as well.
Okay, he has 2 other questions. One is, apart from India, where all the Bohras are found in the world? That's one.
Bohras are found definitely in India. They are found in Yemen. There's a whole population there. They are found in, I'm talking about the larger populations. Pakistan, there is in East Africa. So apart from these, what I have mentioned, they are all around the world. They are there in Australia, America, Europe, all over. So these places that I distinctively mentioned have a larger population of Bohras, a very significant population. East Africa, Yemen, Pakistan, India, also Sri Lanka now. So so these are some places which have a very significant Bohra population, but they have spread to all the continents and all various cities, and every city has established their own administration, their own community center, their own community dining hall, and some have mosques of their own. If they don't have the mosques, they have a prayer hall or the markaz.
Okay, Shafiq has asked this question: how the Dawoodis are different from Ismailis?
We are not different, but we are just a subsect. We have a little extra, like the Ismailis, the Imam. The course of Imamate stops. Some Ismailis believe till the 12 Imams, So we believe till the 21 Imams. And after the Imams, we have not stopped the legacy. It is continued by the Duat al-Mutlaqin or the Dai. So that is different. That is an additional. So we are not very different from them. We follow most of what they follow, but we have a little more extra apart from them.
And one clarification, Ramaswamy Nalakarma, he wants to know the language. Could you repeat the language of the
Yeah,
name?
the language is called Lisan ud Dawat. Lisan means basically language itself, and Dawat means the community. So the language of the community. So Lisan ud Dawat, Lisanudawat, Lisan ud Dawat.
Okay. Then there is Ashoka Pugal has asked this question. You say there are 8,000 Bora Muslims in Madras. What about marriages? So within the 8,000, or you also go across to Gujarat and get married?
No, throughout. I mean, matchmaking is done from all over the world, so it's not limited to people of Chennai or anything, because the Boras are Boras wherever they are. So that is the uniqueness about the community, that no matter which part of the world you are staying in, your costume is the same. There is a uniformity in the language that you speak. There is a uniformity in the traditions you follow. So even if I have to marry into another part of the world and into a Bora family, there is nothing different over there. We are following the same duat and the same preachings, the same costume, attire, language. So the marriages happen among Bora Muslims is what we can say. Geographically, there is no limitation or boundary for that.
Venkatesh Ramanathan has a question. Is the communal kitchen only for Bora Muslims, or is it like a langar where you provide for many people?
Yeah, the community kitchen is only for the Bora Muslims, but the excess food is distributed among the needy, and even otherwise, when there are kind of when the floods happened and when we had this COVID pandemic and all that, the community kitchen doubles up for a social cause. They distribute meals to the needy and the hungry all around. So they have been definitely using this community kitchen as a base for a lot of other social activities as well. And on and off, they keep doing all these kind of activities where they reach out to the needy and the hungry people. And food is that part is used to cook the food over there and distribute it to them.
Okay. So with that, I guess the questions are, you have been pretty clear and the questions are over. I'm yet to get, from the participants themselves are answering a few questions, giving clarity. So that's
Okay.
fine. So thank you, Tasneem, for this wonderful insight into the community. Somebody again, Ashoka Pugal wants to know, there was to be a Jafar ice cream parlor in Mount next
In
year.
Mount Wolfenstein.
Did they belong to the Bora community or Jafar ice cream?
I am not very sure about this one, but there is an Alambardar ice cream parlor in Manadi which is still there. And I have not heard of Jafar's ice cream parlor, so I am not very sure if it is belong to any. At least till now, I am not aware of that. So if somebody has any information on that, they can provide it to us.
Okay, you have a tricky question here. Yusuf Hotel Wala. The name sounds. Can Boras pray with other Muslims?
Boras usually there is a little bit of difference in the the arkans that we do, just very minor differences largely. So we usually pray amongst ourselves in our mosques only, and that is what is usually encouraged. So the mosque that is built is for the community members only.
So I guess still people coming in. How does the community kitchen run, from donations or how? Lukma Chebrolu.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's a good question. The community kitchen is run by donations, and every family is encouraged to give a fixed amount. Those who can afford to, they can pay more than that, though there is no force. And some of them sponsor for the other families, and those who cannot afford, there is no compulsion on them to pay. So basically, it's the people who can afford to, they largely contribute to the financial aspect of it, and it's basically run from the community contributions.
Okay. So can you name freedom fighters from the community where Taibji, Boras?
Tayyabjis, I think they belong to the Khoja, if I'm not wrong, Khoja community. Tayyabjis were not Boras. I my exact knowledge of freedom fighters from all over the country, I might not be able to name, but I can definitely research that for you. One of the persons who, from our ancestors who participated was Murad Ali Akbari. He was the son of Shakhawat Hussain, and he had participated in the freedom struggle. He was also jailed, sent to jail, and later he has settled in Pakistan. So that much I know.
Tasneem, I just lost broadband connection for a while, so I was wondering whether you spoke about the difference of Madrasi Boras and, when I did the field work, I was told initially there was a Madrasi Boras, who are the ones who came earlier. Now, what is the thing and what does the community actually start speaking speaks at home now? Has the language changed over a period of time?
So yeah, like I told you, the Madrasi Boras is basically the descendants of Mullah Jafarji who first came. So they came to be known as the Madrasi Boras later on by the other people who came from the other cities. So since they were around, they settled around 225 years back in Madras. The people who came in from Sitpur and other cities from Kathiawar and those places of Gujarat started referring to them as Madrasi Boras for a very long time, till that is till my father. They were all Urdu speaking. So from our generation, we have been encouraged to follow the Lisanud Dawat, this language, and from our generation, we all speak and converse in Lisanud Dawat or Gujarati. And till my father's time, they were all Urdu speaking in the family.
So there is a kind of shift to the roots, more Gujarati being spoken at home than the earlier days, right?
Exactly, because the entire concept of having a uniformity in the community happens with the language. So, but it's not so rigid. So what happens is, if you go to Madhya Pradesh, you will find so many Bora Muslims. They speak only Urdu over there. So it's not like that. So it depends a lot on the geographical part of the world you live in. If you go to Europe, there will be people who were born and brought up in Spain, Italy, France. So those Bora Muslims over there, they'll be so fluent in those native languages over there which are spoken. So but largely this language unites us when we meet each other at some other city or something. But it is not so rigid, but if you see, geographical influences are very, very important. Wherever you stay, you kind of tend to adapt to that region's cultures, traditions, food as well. So that happens everywhere, I think. So it's not that rigid.
There are quite a lot of questions coming now. Zahabia, she wants to know, is wearing the rida, the dress that you wear is not a burqa, it's not a rida, two-piece, right? Is it compulsory? She wants to know.
The rida and the kurta saya are the dress code of the community, and it is compulsory to an extent. But again, it is also a personal choice. So some of them who don't prefer to wear it, they don't wear it, of course. But it's our identity. It's our unique identity. It is encouraged, and this is the parda system that we have for the women in the community. So we do not wear the burqas that the other community women wear, or the kind of scarves that they wear. If you have to maintain the parda, then this is the uniform that you have to wear. And men, wear the caps and the kurta saya, of course. So when they go to work and all, they usually wear pants, shirts, but they're encouraged to wear these costumes or the libasul anwar that I said as much as they can, even to work or even in their everyday lives. But again, I said it's a personal choice. Not everybody adheres, or it's not a compulsion where you are held accountable for it. But yes, definitely it is. It is when you are meeting up for a community gathering or for any kind of a community discourse, you have to definitely be in your libasul anwar.
Thank you. Ansari Jainuddin has this question. Are they only Dawoodi Boras or does it include Sulaimani Boras?
I am not aware of any Sulaimani Boras in Chennai, at least, but you will find them in Bombay, I think. So as far as my knowledge goes, even if there might be a handful, maybe two or three families, but I'm not aware largely of any Sulaimani Bohras residing in Chennai.
Vincent D'Souza has this question: where Bohras a seafaring community? If yes, was there any sea business links in Old Madras?
There must have been definitely sea business links, because when I spoke about the ancestors and the sons of Mullah Jafarji, like Sheikh Akbar Hussain, Sheikh, and also we were talking about Mullah Ahmad, who was in Arcot, and also these were all traders. And we also have some information on how they were trading materials and goods to various other countries like China and all. And two or three of them had got the Malikut Tajjar title from the Nawabs, which means king of traders. So definitely they must have been doing it through the port that time. So yeah, trade has been happening through the port, but they're not exactly a seafaring community, if I can say.
No, interestingly, this needs some work. Interestingly, one of the earliest mosques to be built in Madras was by trader merchant, and uh, Hussain Khan. He went by various names. He built it in the Mood Street. He is also known as Casa Verona or Kasi Veeranna. Okay, and that mosque, first mosque, came in Mood Street, and today that mosque doesn't exist.
I see. Okay.
It exists. I mean, that's where probably the Bora Mosque is probably there. We do not know.
No, the Bora Mosque is where it is only. The Safi Masjid is the first mosque of the Boras, I mean. When I say the first mosque, I'm not so talking about the first mosque of Chennai. I'm talking about the first Bora Mosque. So the Safi Masjid, which exists right now today, is exactly where Mullah Jafarji bought the land and constructed the mosque. Only difference is that at that time it was a small piece of land. Now it has expanded. We have taken the neighboring buildings, and now the community kitchen is located next to it. The Jamaat Khana is a part of it. So definitely that has not changed at all. The other mosque that you are talking about must have been, I think, a little further down towards the Manadi or the Roypuram side, if I'm not wrong, because even I have read about it. But when I say the oldest Bora mosque, I mean the oldest Bora mosque in Chennai, and for the Boras, not generally old mosque.
Venkatesh Ramanathan has this question: did the Sri Lankan Boras migrate from Chennai?
The Sri Lankan Boras actually have not migrated from Chennai. I think they have migrated directly from Gujarat only. So there is an entire Sri Lankan Bora history itself, which is there. Some of them, in fact, some of the madrasas, one of our ancestors had also gone to Sri Lanka and worked over there for a period of time. So what I know is that the Sri Lankans had, they have their own population over there. Mostly those Gujarat, they are from the Gujarat, the Kathiawar region of Gujarat. So they are the early Sri Lankans over there.
Okay, so thank you. We have almost reached 45 minutes. Thank you, Tasneem, for preparing for this and giving us an insight into the Bora community. The video recording as well as the Facebook will be available in these pages. Apologies, there was a slight glitch initially when we started. I lost the broadband connection, so I couldn't do a proper introduction of Tasneem. She is a journalist and also an activist. She writes in various newspapers, and she also takes part in her father's business. So she is all that rolled into one, a typical Bora woman. So we have a representation of that. And there are questions coming up. Please, post your questions. Probably, Tasneem will answer it in the
I'll
comments.
answer it in the comments as well. So no
Comment,
problem.
because as we are just approaching time, one announcement is this week, next 4 days, we are going to have a lot more interesting programs. Tomorrow is going to be rejuvenating the city. It's a kind of, it's between Penang and Chennai. Penang was the fourth presidency of after Madras of the East India Company, and there are commonalities. The trade existed before the colonizers came. Trade took a different turn with the colonizers. So two people are going to be talking about it. And Penang successfully reinvented itself post-independence as a heritage city, the UNESCO heritage city. So there are two persons of repute. One is Hamdan Abdul Majid of Pink City in Malaysia. He is going to talk about the Penang experience, and our own Dr. Srivatsan, he is going to be talking about the Chennai. We are going to draw parallels from both and how it can enrich each other. That is for tomorrow. On Wednesday, we have very interesting talk. Dr. Sapna Satish, who is uh, professor at Stella Maris College. She is going to be talking about the company paintings, East India company paintings of Madras. It's going to be a very illustrated talk. Please do log in at the same time. Now, the broadcast is available both in our YouTube as well as Facebook. So please see that. On Thursday, few friends requested, so I'm going to be again talking about Arcot Nawab in Madras. So it's going to take on the history to take a holistic view of their contribution to Madras and to the society at large. And Thursday, Friday, we have a very interesting talk, which is by Parameshwari. She is the granddaughter of Mapo Sivanyanam, who fought for retaining Madras when the state reorganization was done. And she is going to be delivering the talk on Madras Manade. That was the slogan used by the Andhra people saying that Madras is ours, which was countered by Talai Koduthenum, Talinagar Kapo. So we will give our head and we will safeguard the capital. That was the counter that Maposi came with. It's a very interesting thing about linguistic reorganization of state. So many border areas where somewhere lost, somewhere brought into Madras. That's going to be the final talk on Friday. Please do log on to this website and Facebook group page camp page as well as the YouTube page. Once again, thank you, Tasneem, for this wonderful
Thank you
lecture.
very much. Thank you for this opportunity. It was a pleasure. I hope we can do something more in future.